Hello, Daniel here and welcome back to the TFL 3. Today you join me at the incredibly underrated Wrocław Główny station. And in this video, we will be travelling all throughout Central Europe. Starting here in the Polish city of Wrocław, which I can assure you is not pronounced anything like Wrocław. I will be taking the České Dráhy loco hauled service to the beautiful Czech capital of Prague, and then another ČD service onto the Slovak capital of Bratislava. Once there, to cap the video off, there will hopefully be a very brief look at some local Slovak rail and OBB services, including a brief dip into Hungary and a stormy journey towards the famous city of Vienna. This is the third part in a multi-part series where I travel across Europe, so if you enjoy the video, do stick around if you want to see more. Anyway, let's get back to Wrocław Główny. Now, I had no idea about this station prior to visiting, but honestly, it is a very underrated station. Built between 1855 and 1857, it looks like a castle and is, in my opinion, very impressive. Wrocław itself is a somewhat underrated destination, given that most English speakers don't even have an idea of how to pronounce it, let alone what there is here. Oh, by the way, if you're wondering how I've got here when the last episode finished in Krakow, I got another PKP loco hauled service which I didn't bother to review because it was basically the same as the other one, and also I was very tired indeed that day. If you haven't seen that review, do go check it out. Anyway, it's time to get on the train, but not before sitting inside the station where the PKP announcement jingle constantly plays every time there's a departure. That sound haunted my dreams for a month. So the ČD train is waiting for me, another loco hauled service. From a British perspective, passenger locomotives are very nostalgic, given that there's not many left here. However, travelling around Europe, they are somewhat everywhere on many non-high-speed intercity services, and you do kind of get sick of them after a while. This is episode 3 of this series, but in real life this is 2 weeks after the departure from London. My first thought is, why do the doors open on both sides? Like, this is straight onto the track. Still don't have an answer for that one, so be careful which side you're alighting from, and double check before jumping out. Anyway, let's go look for a seat, and this time I can actually find one without having to reserve ahead, so I can sit back and enjoy the view of the Polish countryside. Unfortunately, no buffet car on this service, but the journey isn't as long as the Berlin to Warsaw I've already covered, and I could just get a seat anyway, so no trouble. The view of the Polish countryside is rather nice, especially as we track south where flat fields make way for mountains and valleys approaching the Czech border. Interestingly, there are a few stops immediately from Wrocław or before Prague, but near the border there are a fair amount, many of which honestly look really nice. Speaking of, we're crossing the Czech border now. Once we cross the mountains and a few other stops, we can begin to gain some speed again as we head towards Prague. As we pass through some larger Czech towns and cities, it seems as good a time as any to actually review the train. Now there's some charges under this little cover thingy, and also the seats seem nice enough. Oh, hang on, is that a trolley I see? Why, don't mind if I help myself to a sandwich and a snack. They were firmly alright. Appreciated given this train lacked a buffet car, but not exactly life-changing. Oh yeah, the seats also have these flip-up armrests, so that's kind of cool. Alright, that's the train pulling into Praha Hlavny, or Prague main station. I think I managed to roughly pronounce the Główny's in Poland, but Hlavny seems more tricky to say in my opinion. Still, it's an absolutely gorgeous station from one angle, which feels more like a cathedral than a railway station. Unfortunately, I exited from the less glamorous side in order to catch the metro to my hotel. Prague is a very beautiful city. I'd say more so than the Polish cities I've visited so far, although that's hardly their fault given the destruction of World War II. However, Prague is significantly more on the tourist trail, and more expensive as a result. Somewhat of a shock being used to Polish prices, and then seeing how much more Prague cost. One other cool thing is that Prague main station is a great place to train spot. Like, you can see all the locos or multiple units coming and going. You know, given that Prague has one central station, unlike somewhere like London, then this is truly a massive hub for the city, and you can see basically anything that serves Prague come here, going to and from. So stand at the end of the platform and watch the trains go in and out. Anyway, it's time for the next leg, this time to the Slovak capital of Bratislava. Also operated by ČD, this train does in fact have a buffet car, which unfortunately I didn't have time to check out, mainly because I'd already had breakfast and didn't know the service had it. The one from Wrocław didn't, so I guess I just assumed. It doesn't look too bad though, still better than anything in Britain, lol. Hang on, it's also got the door opening out on the tracks again. What the hell, České Dráhy? Seriously, be careful. Anyway, this train appears to have more compartment seating, but for the first time in this entire trip, I managed to get a seat in one, still without having to reserve. For a while, of course, until someone reserved my seat from under me last minute at Brno, but oh well, that's what you get. Frustratingly, I didn't bother to actually review the seat, thinking I'd do it later, but that was not smart on my part. That was no one else's fault but mine. But please enjoy this nice footage out of the window, while I tell you that the compartment was rather nice, although the luggage space was inadequate for my backpack and the luggage of the other passengers who I was in a compartment with. Soon we cross the Slovak border, and then I get bored of filming, to be honest, so now we're arriving at Bratislava Hlavna Stanica. Bratislava is honestly a very underrated city in my opinion, even though I know I say this a lot, and well worth a visit since it's less than an hour's train journey to Vienna, and not much longer to Budapest. To be honest, it is a wonderful city, and I always recommend it to people visiting the area. Not least since it's way cheaper than either of those other two places to stay in. Also, it's the only capital city in the world to border two other countries. A fact I took advantage of some years ago to run laps around the Tri-Point, and did so again to visit the tiny town of Rajka to get a surprisingly modern diesel train to Bratislava Petržalka station. There, I changed through an OBB service to Vienna, just as the thunderstorm rolled through the area. The train itself was mostly good, except for the stupid cable placement. Pictured as my charging cable, which was way too short for my phone to reasonably charge from it. Why not put it in the wall or under a seat like a normal person? Anyway, that's our train arriving into Vienna Hauptbahnhof, Vienna's main station. Honestly, this might be a controversial opinion, but I think Vienna is somewhat overrated. I have been through it twice, but I find it too expensive and almost too snooty for my liking. It feels like the city itself is looking down its nose at me. Does anyone else agree? I'm honestly not sure, let me know in the comments. Also, as mentioned earlier, the weather wasn't brilliant by this point, despite it being absolutely glorious in Bratislava just a few hours earlier, so that probably put a metaphorical dampener on my time here as well as a literal one. With that, we conclude part 3 of my Interrail series. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you'd like to see more, then 2 will already be available. The last video about my travels on PKP Intercity. However, if you're feeling impatient for more of Europe, including next episode where I take the OBB Nightjet to Bregenz, plus the amazing SBB Pedalino to Zurich, then the rest of the series is already available for our generous patrons and YouTube members. See you again soon!